This is the Flourish podcast, a series of conversations with therapists and counselors at Flourish Family Therapy. In this episode, we're talking about divorce.
I'm Jenn with Flourish Family Therapy and with Cameron. And we are here today to discuss the topic that's come up pretty frequently in a lot of our sessions recently, and that's healing after the divorce. So divorce is, as we know, something that affects about 50-60% of all marriages end in divorce. So there's a lot of people that are navigating these things at various different times. So, I think something that people really kind of struggle with during that process is really the fact that we're grieving.
Oh, yeah.
So we end up kind of grieving the loss, not only of the relationship of the person, but also that life that we were thinking we were going to have.
Yes.
So, it creates a little bit of a pause and reset to kind of readjust what life can look like.
Yes. Identity.
Yeah.
Life's purpose. The story of your life. Right? How you judge yourself. All of these things are implicated in that process, right? Sometimes we have ideas about what marriages should look like or what our lives should look like. Maybe we believe that we should only be married once and for the rest of our lives, right? And that belief is good. If it works for you, that's awesome. But if you believe that and now you have gotten divorced, that can be extremely distressing because now you're experiencing some level of maybe cognitive dissonance. You believe something, but something else has happened through your behavior, and those two things are in conflict. And that can be really confusing and scary, right?
Right. And then, the extended view of that is when we have those, that dissonance, right? We have a lot of chaotic thoughts. And so when our thoughts are all over the place, then our behaviors reflect that, right? And so sometimes we'll hear people say, I can't catch my break, a break or my breath. Or, things just keep happening to me. I keep messing up in this area and that. And, I think when we're able to really pause and reset, maybe taking some really deep breaths, really focusing inward on the things that we can control, then we're able to navigate those things a little bit easier.
Yes.
Not saying that we're not going to feel the pain. It's still going to be painful.
Yes.
Right? And we're going to feel the loss.
And I mean, look, we're human beings, we're social creatures. It should be painful. Right. When our tribe starts to break down, our brain is telling us our survival could be at risk, right? This is a stress response that happens, right? So people going through relationship termination, whether through a divorce or just a breakup with a long-term partner, are going to experience some pretty severe physical symptoms sometimes, right? People will have nightmares. People may wet the bed. Right? People will have severe anxiety, panic attacks, right? They may not be able to eat anymore, right? We've seen clients come through who are going through a relationship problem and they are no longer able to eat or they're having some physical problem and they're going to the doctor and the doctor's saying, we don't see anything wrong with your body, right? We come into session and we talk about it and they're realizing, oh my God, like it's all connected. So I think to your point, even if it's just a deep breath or something to soothe your nervous system, it's not just to make you feel better on like the surface, right? We're trying to soothe our body and tell ourselves we're safe and we're going to be okay, right? I mean, and I think there are some other ways to do that. What could be some other ways people could make themselves feel okay in the interim while they recover after a relationship ends?
Yeah, and I think reminding ourselves that we are safe. I'm safe in my body right now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm safe in my being. I'm physically going to be okay, and just reminding ourselves that this is temporary.
Yes.
It doesn't always feel like that, of course, we know that, but it's temporary.
Yeah.
And those emotional states, ultimately, when we're able to pause and reset, we're able to take control of those things that feel so out of control initially. And I think that's the whole thing, right? When there's all these moving parts, we're feeling really out of control and really overwhelmed.
That's true.
And so I think another, really easy thing to do is take one step at a time, right? We focus on one task and we do just one thing at a time. It doesn't have to be like, okay, if our house is a mess, right? Like it doesn't have to be, we have to clean the whole thing right now, right? We just take a little part of the room. It doesn't even have to be the whole room, right? A little part of our desk.
I know that works for me. I'll clean a little part of my room and maybe the rest will be a disaster,
But then we've accomplished that, right? And there's a sense of self and identification that comes from taking care of our own self and our own belongings. You had mentioned that sense of identity earlier. And we really get tied into our relationships as our sense of self. We might ask people, oh, Jen, what is something about you? Okay, well, I'm married, blah, blah, blah. And so sometimes people really start with that. So when we're getting divorced, we sometimes don't even know how to say that. Right?
True.
What do we want everyone to know?
Right.
So I tell everybody we want to have an elevator speech, right? We want to say something that is in our control, right? And it's maybe we don't have to disclose everything to everybody. Not everybody needs to know all of our business, right? Okay. So maybe we say something like, "Oh, I'm, working on finding myself again," or and we were putting the focus back on us. And so we how do you say, like, we control the narrative on that, right? When we have our little elevator speech about if someone's like, "Oh, hey, how's that divorce going?" I don't know what people say, or "How's your marriage going?" Right? You would have something in your back pocket that would be something that we would want people to know, and we always want people to know that we appreciate their support, and that we're going to be okay, right? Because we want to make sure that we're reminding ourselves of that in our words to other people too.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you can take ownership of your story, right? Like if somebody asks what you're going through, you don't have to disclose every nitty-gritty detail. In fact, you never do, right? You get to choose what you tell other people about what's going on in your life, right? And you don't have to be dishonest, but you can be selective. If you're in a small talk conversation with somebody, you're not being a liar just because you don't go into the details of how bad the divorce is, right? You're going through a separation and you're doing something else with your time now or whatever. And I think to go to a different level of this, it's not just about what we say, right? But maybe about what we're doing too, right? Because if we're sitting at home all alone after we've gotten our divorce, how are we going to ever feel like anything is getting better for us, or now we know who we are, right? Like one thing that has been helpful for some of my clients in this situation is to just ask, like, what are the things that you skipped doing for yourself while you were in that relationship, right? So those are the things that maybe now you have the opportunity to do with your free time, and then you can start to feel some identity around the things that you never got to do before because the relationship was a barrier for you, whether because the other person just said don't do this or any other reason, right? I think that's completely relevant. But identity, it's not just about what we say, but also what we're doing with our time and how we see ourselves in the world, right?
And I really believe that goes back to that congruence, right? When we have that dissonance, we're not congruent with the things that we think and do, right? Or feel. And so, when we have that congruency, when we know, okay, I'm not defined by this relationship ever. Right. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that in it, but when we take a step back and we're out of it, we can very clearly see our definition of self does not have to come from a relationship.
True.
And so as we're redefining ourselves sometimes by finding the things that we like to do, the interests that maybe we used to have, or finding just new joy in, right?
Yes.
Then we're able to give that sense of self, right? Maybe some energy, right? And that's important because we got to pour into ourselves because nobody else will.
I mean, true. And it's a hard lesson that sometimes we learn when those big relationships that felt like our everything start to break down. You realize, I mean, truly at the end of the day, you are the person with yourself all the time, right? And that can be really uncomfortable to feel that in real time, but it's a necessary truth that sometimes we just have to come into contact with and make peace with, right? We're going to be the ones alone in our mind when we lay in bed at night with ourselves, right? Our partner can be in the other room, asleep, whatever. It's just me and myself, right? Same in your final moments of life, right? You may have family members around you, but it's just you and yourself. And when we feel alone, when those relationships break down, it's good to plan for future relationships, look for more, but sometimes take that time to build your relationship with yourself more, right? That might be the relationship you've needed for a long time, is the one with you, right? I mean,
and I also say get to know you so that you don't end up in another situation that maybe isn't the long-term relationship for us.
How are those two things connected? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So I think when we know who we really are and what our wants and needs and values are, and really the core values that we demonstrate, then we're more likely to attract people with those similar interests and needs, right? And so sometimes when we meet people, we want for them to like us.
Yes, true. It's human.
Right. So, okay, so maybe we have our mask on for a little bit of time, right? But then after some time, that mask comes off. Well, we don't always recognize some of the things other people do, right? Maybe we recognize them as, oh, we don't really like that, but just overlook it. Maybe, you know what I mean? We're not seeing things. But when we know ourselves, we know what our boundaries are, and we know what we're okay and not okay with a little bit easier.
True.
In terms of, okay, this is going to work for me and not, and then being able to say that. There's a lot of relationship. Well, I see this a lot with marriage counseling, right? Is communication. Number one issue, right? People come into marriage counseling for, or that lack thereof. And that communication is really important when we're talking about, okay, what our wants and needs are and what our boundaries are. And sometimes, again, if we're not grounded and really truly ourselves, then we're not able to communicate those things well, because maybe we don't even know them. So that pause and reset is so important, so that we're able to say, okay, this is what I learned from this experience, right? It's not a failure. We've never lived this life before with this person, right? So like, this is new, and we give ourselves that grace and understanding, and we learn from that.
So it becomes an opportunity, not just to learn from the past, so that you don't have to get caught up in those same cycles again, but also to learn who you are and what you might need differently in the future, and also like reshape your identity so that you can find a match that works really well for you. Right, for sure. And I love that.
Yeah, and when we know ourselves, we're more equipped for those opportunities to happen, right? Because, and I think also forgiveness. I don't know if we talked about that, but forgiveness is a big deal, right? We have to not only forgive ourselves for the end of the relationship, because as we know, with divorce, there can be a lot of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And we get the guilt and shame because we're regret because of whatever reason, right? We feel like we failed. This is bad, whatever it is, right? So when we forgive ourselves for that, right, and then maybe for the other person, I mean, sometimes we get divorced because somebody's done us wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Straight up. And so then what we do is we have to forgive them too, so that we're not holding on to any of that, I don't know, ill will or resentment. Because we know that really challenges us in the next relationship.
Some people, when they hear that, the automatic response is, well, they did something really bad. They kind of deserve it, right? Why should I forgive them? And then what do you say to that?
Well, I say forgiveness is always for us, not for them. So, because people don't really know if we forgive them or not. And at the end of the day, like, we just know carrying, harboring those resentment feelings or anger, frustration, guilt, and shame are never going to allow us to be truly ourselves, right? Because we'll have so much energy attached to. And again, I'm not saying that we're not a victim. We're victims plenty of time in relationships. You know what I mean? And that people do wrong things. But again, us holding on to that does not allow for us to move forward. And I really think about that when I think about, resiliency, right? Because I think there's relationship resiliency when we're able to learn from those past experiences and then move forward.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to just learn and then do the same thing. We need to learn and move forward, right? And part of that moving forward is allowing ourselves that freedom to do so without, those resentment feelings.
It's true.
Or anger.
What I'm hearing too is the anger or the resentment keeps us focused outward, right?
Yes,
and it's good to recognize where we didn't have control or where we need to give ourselves grace or forgiveness for ending up in a situation we didn't choose. Sure, right? There are other people do things that are wrong, right? But if we stay focused on that other person and what they did that made us so angry and had to leave, we're also still like defining ourselves and how we feel in relationship to that person, right? We're still actually like in many ways connected to them, even when the feelings that we're having are, no, I hate them, I don't want to be around them. Well, then why are you spending so much time thinking and feeling certain types of ways about this person, right? I guess forgiveness can allow us to recenter and say, okay, obviously I have my boundaries with that person. That's what I've learned from this. But two, what do I need to move forward? Right?
Yes. Because, when we're staying in that cycle, right, of being angry or frustrated externally, then it really doesn't allow us to have the accountability that we need.
Yeah.
And that accountability doesn't mean that we're accepting blame or giving blame. It just simply means that, we're finding responsible, creative solutions to our problem.
Yeah.
Kind of piggybacking on the spiritual laws, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to really accept the situation how it is, not how we desire it to be, right? I think people would love to go through a divorce that didn't make people angrier, where people weren't trying to, I don't know, take more money or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's not always our situation. And so if understanding that allows us to move differently, cool. You know what I mean? But if it's because of this, that, and we want to keep in that anger, it doesn't really change the fact that we're still angry.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
If it made us feel less angry at some point by holding on to it or whatever, okay, yeah, that would work. But it just doesn't. And sleep's also very important.
Yes. Sleep, eating good,
yes. Taking
right?
care of yourself,
taking care of yourself.
Those going back to those basic needs, right? Sometimes there's going to be a lot of traumatic things sometimes that happen through a divorce, right? Or there's also going to be just a lot of heavy stuff. So we know, we go back to HALT, like hungry, angry, lonely, tired. You feel any of those stuff, right? Yes. And so when we know that, we pour into it, we allow ourselves to get some sleep so our brain can reset, so our body can heal itself. And, we're eating right, we're getting water, we're doing the things that we can control. We can control what we're consuming.
This
is
true.
Control what time we go to bed.
This is true. I mean, and I think it's important. And for those of you who didn't pick up on this, HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, is a DBT skill for basically going through a checklist of your basic needs before you react to a situation, right? You're feeling some big feelings about a situation. Cool. Also make sure your basic needs are met. So that's not going to distort the way you react, right? I think there was a study done that showed that judges, after lunch, their rates of sentencing change because their blood sugar level changes and it affects their overall mood and demeanor and the way that they respond to situations. Yes, there are studies on this. Look it up. Right? It makes such a big difference. You can see it affect how harshly people are sentenced before and after a judge takes a break to get some time away and eat some lunch, right? It's kind of scary when you think about how dependent sometimes we can be on others feeling okay, right? Especially in that situation. But it drives the point home, I think, for sure.
And I think just greater validation, confirmation that we can only control ourselves. We can't control if other people are going to eat or how they're going to respond to us and what they're going to do, right? So we maintain, close to ourselves, and that's all that matters, right? We try to just act from that true spirit and, feel the feelings as they come up.
Yeah.
Right? We don't want to dismiss them as oh my God, no, I'm going to, I don't need to feel this. But of course we do. Yeah.
I mean, I think on the self-care point, there's a lot of self-care content out there nowadays. And people are like, okay, watch your favorite movie, do whatever you want. Basically do whatever makes you feel good. And that's cool. At the same time, there can be a difference between that and genuinely giving yourself what you need to be healthier and feel more emotionally uplifted or stable, right? I think the difference between, eating healthy, getting to bed on time, right? Practicing basic hygiene, make sure you feel confident. There's a difference between that and staying up late, getting 4 hours of sleep because you're on your phone until 3 a.m. Right?
Yes.
It might feel great to do that, and you can say it's self-care, but you are really in that situation, maybe avoiding something. Maybe it is fun to stay up late on your phone, right? And neglect yourself of sleep. But we can't always call that self-care. There at least has to be other ways that we meet our own needs, not just our wants and what feels good. Right? I mean, would you agree with that?
Yes. And to not kind of get in that passive pattern, which is really a lot of the phone use, right? It's kind of passive. You don't really have to do a lot. You know what I mean? When we're really pouring into ourselves, it takes some effort and some energy to do that.
That's true.
And it's not always easy. And we know this. We know it's not always easy to get out of bed and do the things. And we know that. And I mean, we help people all day do this, right? And we're able to understand where motivation comes from. And, really, when we focus back on the center, being ourselves, we have more ability to do that, right? Because that external, if we're so focused on the external, then that's a condition on our mood. And we don't want that.
True.
We want to be a condition of our mood only, just us, nobody else. Right?
That makes sense. Yes. I love that. That's a great way to say that.
Yes. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.